Happy Monday. Okay, it's gray and a little bit drizzly, all right? Did you have a good weekend? What were some of the fun things that happened? Okay, all right. Yeah. What coming up this week is going to be pretty good and exciting? What are you looking forward to? I know, Bib Lit class, I know that's what everybody wants to say, but I mean besides that. Will some of you vote tomorrow? Some of you maybe have voted already? Okay. Well, I'm happy for the rain and happy Monday. Here we have please give all your attention to Jason. He's got all the announcements.
All right, Thanksgiving break is coming around the corner. Dorms will be open for this break. Dining services and student life would like to know your plans so we know who is here. Please use the QR code to fill out the Google form. Next. Another way to stay in the loop with what is happening on campus is being part of the HC ResLife 2425 GroupMe. This is for all students. Use the QR code to sign up and have your ID number ready to join. Next. Check on My Hesston for available jobs. Some jobs that are available are Arboretum Grounds Assistant, Social Media Assistant, and Esports Stream Manager. More details about each of these positions will be in the Larks in the Loop. And now for announcements from athletics.
I brought the wrong paper, so let's see if I remember them. Men's basketball won 2 games, won an exciting 1-point victory over Metropolitan Community College. This last weekend, the men play at Hutchinson Community College tomorrow. The JV team is at home on Wednesday, and both the men and women travel to Southeast Community College on Saturday. The women also host, is it Kansas Wesleyan on Wednesday? McPherson on Wednesday. Sorry, I'm doing this by memory. I brought the softball schedule for the week instead of the announcements. Some exciting news in esports. The eSport Rocket League team won their first conference championship this last week for the school. They also have another team that if they win this week will also be conference champions. They've been doing very well. And you can check that schedule out on the Lark Athletic website. Thanks.
Good morning. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ken Rogers and I teach in the performing arts area. And this morning I've been asked to talk a bit about my own journey of interacting with Native American peoples and of living on this land. So I hope that you have already begun to appreciate some things about Kansas if you are not from here. One of the things I love about travel is that I get to see different parts of the country and even different parts of the world. And everywhere I go, even if things are very, very different, I love the fact that there is beauty in the things that are wherever you're traveling. Kansas can be a little flat for some of you, with lacking some trees perhaps and things like that. But maybe you have some other images that you've begun to realize. Things like the fact that we have sunflowers. This is our state bird, a meadowlark, the western meadowlark to be specific, on a sunflower. Buffalo. This entire area of the Great Plains would have been in earlier times filled with millions of American bison, wild animals that roamed the plains and provided not only food, but also leather and hides to be used for clothing and for shelter. Perhaps you have gone to Wichita and you've seen the Keeper of the Plains. If you've not, I encourage you to do that, which is and then kind of in downtown Wichita on the Arkansas River. And it's by a Kiowa Comanche artist by the name of Black Bear Boson, who's no longer living, but it was made in the 1970s. The name Kansas and even the statue on the top of the state capitol reflects its Native American roots. Kansas is named after the Kansa people, the people of the South Wind. And here we have a Native American hunter shooting toward the stars. And the name of the statue is Ad Astra per Aspera, to the stars through difficulty, which is really something that the Western European settlers who came to this area, it's the motto, the Latin motto that they took, which, considering the native peoples who were here, is a bit ironic. So, long before Europeans laid claim to the land which is now Hesston College, I wish to acknowledge that Native Americans, specifically the Kansa or Kaw people, the Osage, the Kiowa, the Wichita, the Comanche, the Ute, and the Otsiti-Sakowin peoples lived, hunted, and buried their family members here. I grew up in this area on a farm outside of Hesston, about 10 minutes north and east of here. This is me and my parents. This is my oldest sister's wedding. I was about 3 years old. I'm the one in the middle down there. And I grew up in a pretty typical household, kind of a farmhouse that was built in 1909. And it was a place of great imagination. It was really a wonderful childhood. There's a reason I am not a farmer today, because I really dislike the outdoors. I kill kind of every plant I touch, and I just would not make a good farmer. I am very happy for people that do. But one of the things I loved about growing up on a farm is I understand where our food comes from, the cycles of nature. And we also had a large section, a pasture we called it, of unbroken prairie. Outside, behind our farm, there's the back of the farm in the picture. This is from a hill. It's from a hill that was called Buffalo Mountain. We called it Buffalo Mountain because legend had it that the last free-ranging buffalo in the area was shot on that hill. So, one of the realities of Western expansion was the fact that millions and millions of buffalo were hunted almost to extinction. It's without a couple of people that really worked at preserving buffalo, it's very likely that the buffalo could have gone extinct around the year 1900. But this was a place that had great imagination. I imagine Native American peoples here. My family actually helped me build a teepee. And my father and I built one summer a kind of a dugout with willow trees and chicken wire and prairie grass that we put on top of it that made kind of a dwelling much like the Wichita Indians would have lived in. So it was a place of great imagination. So one of the things that was a shock for me was I began to realize that my preoccupation, actually really my obsession with Native Americans growing up, I think fueled partly by the land that I grew up on, had a very dark side. And part of that comes from a theology of the Renaissance in Europe. It's called the doctrine of discovery. It's a theological philosophical, and legal framework established by the Christian Church that gave European governments moral and legal rights to invade and seize indigenous lands and dominate indigenous peoples. So this is from 1452 to the kings of Spain and Portugal. Pope Nicholas V says, "We grant you, kings of Spain and Portugal, by this edict, with our apostolic authority, full and free power to invade, search out, capture, and subjugate the pagans and any other unbelievers and enemies of Christ, wherever they may be, as well as their kingdoms, duchies, counties, principalities, and other property, and to reduce their persons into perpetual slavery, and to apply and approximate realms, duchies, royal palaces, principalities, and other dominions, possessions, and goods of this kind to you and to your use and your successors." The church is telling European governments, when you encounter someone who's not Christian, they are automatically pagan and they are an enemy of the church. And it is your right to take everything they have and to put them into slavery. And all that you take is for your use and for your successors' use, for your children and your grandchildren. So, this is something that happened not only in the 1500s, in the 14 and 1500s, but as Europeans landed on this continent and began to move westward, this idea found itself in what was called manifest destiny, and is depicted in this painting by John Guest in 1872, the same year that the Kaw people were removed from this state to Oklahoma. It's called American Progress. You'll notice the white angel is moving from east to west, from light to dark, holding a book in one hand and a telegraph wire in the other. Native Americans can be seen exiting the picture on the far left as wagons and the railroad enter from the far right. So progress means Europeans moving in and driving Native Americans out, the savages, the pagans, the people who are less than human. And the fact that they didn't own land in the traditional sense that Western Europeans owned land meant that no one owned it. So the peoples who lived here were for the most part nomadic, following hunting, going on hunts at different times of the year. And so the Kaw people, the Kanza people, it's kind of used interchangeably, that Kansas is named after, had most of the current state of Kansas as their hunting ground. But by 1872, that had been relegated to a tiny, tiny patch of land of less than 1,000 acres near Council Grove, Kansas. And this is what their Chief Alagawahu said. He said, "You treat my people like a flock of turkeys. You come into our dwelling place and scare us out. We fly over and alight on another stream, but then you come along and drive us further and further. In time we shall find ourselves across the great mountains and landing into the bottomless ocean." That's Chief Alagawahu, the last Kanza chief on this land. So one of the realities that we live with in this space is that we live on land that used to be occupied by people who were removed from this place. Most of them moved to small counties in Oklahoma. So this is a later picture of me, my older brother, and three sisters, and my mother. My father died many years ago, but when my mother died in 2017, the reality was the will said all the land that was in the family needed to be sold. So our family farm was to be sold. We'll go to a video here. So one of the things about a land acknowledgement is it says, yes, there were people that are here, but what does that mean? This is from a Canadian theater in, I think, British Columbia, but it's a land acknowledgement, and I think points out a little bit of the challenges of a land acknowledgement.
Hello. Oh. Hello. First, I'd like to remind everyone here to turn off your cell phones. Before we begin this evening's performance, we would like to acknowledge that this theater stands on territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Petun First Nations. We are also mindful of broken covenants and the need to make right with all our relations. And now, please enjoy the show.
Oh, sorry, hello? Sorry, excuse me, should we go?
Excuse me?
Oh, no, I just mean if we're on someone else's land, shouldn't we leave?
Oh, no. The theater is here now. We'd just like to acknowledge whose land it is.
I'm sorry, I'm so confused. So if we're on someone else's land, shouldn't we do something about that, or?
Hopefully we'll enjoy the performance.
Oh, okay, so some of the money from the ticket sales of the show are going to the indigenous communities?
Well, no.
Oh, a portion of them?
No, the ticket sales go to the theater.
So is the money from the bottled water sold here going to the First Nations for clean drinking water, or?
Oh, no, that money goes to Nestle.
Nestle.
They're a sponsor.
I'm so sorry. I'm so confused. So whose land are we on? What are we doing?
It's a dialogue.
How are we making right?
Well, there's a plaque you can read in the lobby.
I don't understand.
I'm getting a message from the stage manager that we need to begin the show, so please take your seats.
But,
Have a good time.
but,
Good night.
guess I'll sit down.
So I think it's good that we acknowledge whose land it is, but it really doesn't address some of the issues. So one of the challenges is, how do we make right? There's a land called The Discovery, A Comic Lament by Alison Brookins and produced by Ted and Company, which is about this issue. And one of my favorite scenes in that story, in that play, is about a man who has bought an old car and has restored it lovingly. It is his prized possession. He has gone through, redone everything, taken everything down to the structure and rebuilt it, lovingly recreated it. And he's working on his car, polishing it one day, and a young woman comes along and says, "That's a car that we have discovered. That was my grandfather's car that was stolen from him 40 years ago." And somehow they had discovered the title number and things like that and traced it finally to this person. What do we do? The young woman proceeds to talk about how her grandfather loved that car so much. He had paid everything for this car. It was his prized possession. And he talked about it the rest of his life. And yet, the other person had bought the car legally and had cared for it lovingly, and it was also his prized possession. The challenge with this story is that both are right. Both have compelling stories. And yet, what should happen? What should happen? So it's a question of how do we journey toward restoration. This is Alagawahu Park, which is on which is just outside of Council Grove, Kansas. It's about an hour northeast of here on your way toward Kansas City. And it is the last location of the Kanza people before they were forcibly removed in 1872 to Kaw County, Oklahoma. Nearly the entire tribe died by the time they got to Oklahoma. In fact, they had given many of their dances and possessions away to other tribes because they thought they would probably die out, and that would be a way for them to preserve those things. So when this story of what happened to the people of the state of Kansas, the native peoples, when that story began to be really visible to my siblings and I, the question is, what do we do? So my oldest sister, Florence, who is 18 years older than I and much smarter than I am, she began to, and also retired, so she began to work on what would it mean to give a portion of the land sales to someone. But who? Who do you give it to? Fortunately, we were able to contact someone within the Kaw Nation, and they had been thinking about ways to work at restoring Alagoahu Park. And so one of the things that was able to happen was that my sister and myself were able to donate to what is called the Kanza Heritage Foundation. It is an organization meant to work at preserving Kaw heritage and Kaw culture. And a lot of it goes toward this particular park. Through the foundation, they have been able to build a powwow pavilion, so now that they can hold dances on the land after which we call the state, after the Kanza people, where they had been. Another thing that happened through this was the return of what was called the Big Red Rock. This sat for many years in Lawrence, Kansas. It's a huge boulder that used to sit in the middle of the Kansas River, and it sat kind of between Lawrence and Topeka. And the people of Lawrence decided they wanted to have that rock for themselves. And in the middle of the night, somehow, they were able to remove it, take it, get it somehow onto a train, get it to Lawrence, and it sat in a park in Lawrence with a big bronze plaque on it commemorating the founders of Lawrence. That rock was one of the most sacred places for the Kanza people. They called it their sacred rock, is where they would go to pray. So one of the things that they began to imagine with the foundation was, what would it mean for that to go back to the Kanza people? So last year, on August 29, Governor Kelly in the city of Lawrence, representatives from the city and from the state, apologized for having taken it and gave it unconditionally back to the Kanza people. And there was a dancing and a great festival afterwards. But it was a powerful moment. One of the things that I realize is that it's the little steps that lead to larger steps. And so each of us, I think, need to find ways to be in community with people that sometimes we have damaged. This is my friend Pauline Sharp in the white dress and my sister in the kind of coral shawl at a Kanza powwow. And this is Pauline Sharp in probably one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. She had given a presentation about her grandmother, the first woman Kaw chief, Chief Lucy. And afterwards, they called me up. I didn't know about this. And they presented me with a Pendleton blanket, which shows a turtle. which in many Native American cultures is the symbol of the earth. And they talk about the loss of Turtle Island. The turtle is the island on which we live. And for them, it has meant being put onto smaller and smaller spaces and removed. But it could also mean the loss of the environment. Be all kinds of ways that we can interpret that. I was embarrassed because I had given a donation to say, I am so sorry for what, not that my ancestors knew what they had done. I don't think they had any idea that there were people that were living here. They had been removed. But the fact is, I benefited from someone else's loss. And the fact that then I got a gift in return was humbling, to say the least. The Dick Arboretum of the Plain has some wonderful quotes as you walk around it. And one of my favorites is this one by Aldo Leopold. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. So the golden rule is do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And one of the reasons I believe this kind of work, no matter what it is, maybe it's dealing with issues of slavery, African American slavery. If you're from another country, you have stories that you have to deal with, I'm sure. All of us, just because we are human, have stories of pain in our past that we need to deal with. And part of restoring community is working at listening with each other's stories. The fact is, as a Christian, I am appalled by what Christianity said in the 15th century. I am appalled by that. And yet, as a Christian today, part of my calling is to work at restoration. And I hope that this story, of one way that I have worked with that, inspires you to perhaps do something in your own life. What would be something that restores relationship with someone else?
Thank you so much. I want us to take a moment, so kind of look up, think about. Let me ask this, you don't have to answer, rhetorical question. For those of us who are white European Americans, is this a little bit hard to hear? We have done wrong, and we have benefited. You know? In smaller ways, have you done wrong or benefited from what somebody else did? How can you make it right or begin to make it right? And how can we not make an excuse, well, I can't give all the land back, to say I can do something? So that's the challenge that Ken has given us. And thank you, Ken, for leading the way. That was incredible. I want to end with prayer. So let's all give our attention. I'm going to pray to the Creator God, the one who the called people honored in worship. Please pray with me. Creator God, one who did create everything, including Turtle Island. Many of us have sinned, maybe not intentionally, but we benefit from the sins of our ancestors. Help us to make it right so that we may be one community, a community that loves each other as you love us all. For if we truly have your love inside of us, then we will love all of our brothers and sisters. Change our hearts so that we may love all of our brothers and sisters and that we may make amends for where we have done wrong. Help us to listen to stories that make us squirm, because until we do that, the community cannot be healthy. We want a healthy community here at Hesston College. Help us, Creator God. Amen. Amen. Thank you for listening. On Friday, we're going to talk about a massacre. We're going to talk about a massacre that happened not very far from here. Whoa, you're not, thank you for staying seated, thanks. And I want, again, your utmost attention because, again, as we are focusing on Native American history this week, this is important stuff for us to know, even if it's a little bit painful. So be ready to learn some cool things through stories and videos. All right, we're going to take attendance. Thanks.